Welcome to the Lawyer's Emotional Intelligence Book. My name is Dave Scriven-Young, a lawyer focusing on litigation, environmental law, and construction law from Chicago, Illinois. We're helping to create the next generation of lawyers with high emotional intelligence through a weekly book club and daily practical posts at facebook.com/lawyersEQ. During our book club discussions, we'll do a deep dive into books that will help us develop emotional intelligence skills and specifically think about how we can begin to use these skills in our law practices. I'll be live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central for this discussion, and it is discussion. Please liberally use the box below to make and use comments. I don't sit here as an expert. On the contrary, I'm certainly interested in listening to what you have to say, and I can only do that if you comment, if you follow along, and would love to hear what you have to say. I look forward to learning from all of you. So let me just give you sort of the background into what we're going to be doing for today. So in case you've never seen this show before, some information about me. I graduated in 2003 from DePaul University College of Law in Chicago. I'm senior counsel at Picard and Abramson PC. I'm also a civil litigator. Also do some construction law as well as environmental law, and operate from an office in Chicago, although obviously nowadays I'm at my home in Naperville, Illinois. So that's a little bit about me. And then, of course, my mission is to identify and share historically correct knowledge and resources, and hopefully in an inspiring and entertaining format, in order to help others meet and exceed goals and standards in every areas of their lives. And I hopefully do that through this video broadcast as well as through my Lawyer Lifestyle podcast, which I look at. I do a deep dive into topics including marketing, sales, and leadership for attorneys. So we actually have a guest today. As I think we've talked about many times, I'm always interested in bringing in new voices, bringing in so I can spend more time with my friends online. And no better friend than my wife, Kathy. So I'm going to bring her on. We'll see if this works. This is the first time that we're doing this, having a guest on. So let me bring her on. And I don't know, she went away. Oh, that doesn't bode well for what we're trying to do here. So, Kathy, if you can hear me, go back into the link and try to get in again. When I try to bring you up, for some reason it went out. So come on in when you get a chance. All right, so we'll just keep moving on here. Okay, so what have we talked about through this? We've done we've talked primarily about self-management, which is the emotional intelligence skill that we've been dealing with. And I think she could be back on. So let me try to bring her back on. Kathy, are you there?
I am. Sorry, the internet dropped out.
Oh yeah, that's going to happen every now and then. And I can see you're frozen too. So it may be you may need to go into a different part of the house just to make sure that you're not going to drop out. Yeah, I think it's just I think it's an internet issue that you're having. So anyway, let's go back to what we talked about last time, which is self-management. So this is the part where we're dealing with we're sort of recognizing what's going on with ourselves and managing our own emotions. And so we know when we walk into a situation what hits our buttons and how we react to things, right? And so the book that we are dealing with to help us with self-management is The Stress Solution by Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. And so far we've talked about a few different things. We've talked about purpose, how to align our purpose with our actions and our actions with our purpose. And we do those things. Some of the things that Dr. Chatterjee prescribes are things like affirmations, reframing, so taking what maybe looks like a bad situation and making it into a good situation, or thinking about it in a good situation. Having an evening gratitude session, so thinking about what's good in your life every night, that helps you to reduce stress. Scheduling your time and having a morning routine to allow you to get what you need to get done, but also to allow you to do what you want to do more often. And then finally, how to live more. So how to do the things you love, how to do things with intention, how to do things with a vision. And then the E is engaging with others. And then we've also talked about relationships. So that would be things like, how the sense of touch allows us to de-stress. So if you think about, going for a massage, why does that de-stress you? Yes, it's someone working on your muscles, but it's also the sense of touch. So hugging, petting your dog, all of those things helps with the sense of touch. And then nurturing relationships. So making sure that you continue on with good friendships, and you nurture those relationships by making sure that you spend time with others, which I'm trying to get my wife on here. I don't know if it's going to happen because the internet has been wonky. I don't know if anyone else has had some wonky internet, but we certainly have. And it happens. This is a live show, so anything can happen. We follow a show called WDWNT. It's like a comedy show focused on Disney, and they have some wacky things that go on that show because it's live. It's not a professional get up at all, and so it's a fun time. So let's dive into the next topic. So what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to talk a little bit about recent news. We're going to talk about last week's discussion item and action item, which talked about nurturing relationships. We're going to continue on with the stress solution. Specifically, we're going to talk about body, which is kind of the third component. The first was purpose, second is relationships, and third is body. And we're going to eat ourselves happy, which is going to be sort of a fascinating topic on how to eat better and how that will actually de-stress you. And again, typical disclaimer, this is not a replacement for any necessary psychological or medical treatment. Certainly consult a doctor or other medical professional if you need it, if you're suicidal, or if you are feeling deeply depressed. Follow a doctor's instructions. Call 911. Don't rely on this for that. So I heard a beep. I think we're going to try to get my wife on one more time. Let's see if we can do that. There you are.
I contacted IT. They came over and they hooked me up. So thanks to IT.
Was that our son?
His name was Henry. Yeah, he's a nice IT man.
Okay, so it was Henry. Very good. All right. So basically, we did the introduction overview from last time. You've been watching the show, so you know what's up.
Right.
Okay. So hopefully you're going to be able to see the screen when I share it.
I have been. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is the recent news. So obviously people have been, sheltering in place, working from home. And this article was interesting to me because as a litigator, and by the way, maybe let's back up. And we'll give you sort of the full introductory treatment. So my wife, Kathy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Obviously, I know all about you, but the people watching do not. So maybe tell us, what you do, what you're up to.
So, like everybody else, of course, with the shelter in place, but I am not a lawyer, not a litigator, but I feel like being married to a lawyer, you're still involved in that world of law, right? And you still understand things like stress because you see how your significant other or your spouse has to deal with it. And you yourself too want to find ways that make it so that you can help your spouse at home and in the non-work environment with their stress. I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, so that's a stressful job as well in a different way. And kind of one of the reasons I wanted to come on is because obviously you're specifically looking at lawyers, but except for when you get very specific and you talk about how can we do this in our practice, a lot of what you talk about, I think it applies to almost any professional. It applies to adults in general. Life gets stressful. And yeah, so that's me. Teacher, mom. In the summer, obviously, I'm mostly just a mom because there's no school. That's me.
Excellent.
And wife of a lawyer.
Yes, wife of a lawyer, most importantly. And I wanted to bring you on to give a diverse perspective on things, a non-lawyer perspective. I've been talking a lot on my podcast about having a diverse team and how other voices are important. Obviously, not just wants to hear me talk. Thanks for coming on. Okay. All right. Now I think we can move on, and feel free to jump in at any time. But yeah, so this is the news item for this week, and with everybody working from home, the question I think everyone kind of felt like is, would things change in the practice? Because one of the big stressors in a litigator's life is dealing with opposing counsel, dealing with judges who hold us to very tight restrictions. And the question is, and civility is a huge topic within the legal profession as well. So the question is whether civility would increase or decrease during the pandemic and people working from home, because I think people really have the possibility of either being really continue to be jerks, or even push the screws a little even tighter on your adversary. And I don't think people really knew what was going to happen. But according to this article, at least, during the crisis, all aspects of practicing law seem to have become more pleasant. And part of the reason for this new civility is that during shelter-in-place orders, some of the normal pressures of litigation have eased. Litigators hide or repress our true reactions, but the deadlines imposed by judges can impose stress on us, and that will impact our dealings with opposing counsel. But according to this article, at least, during the shutdown, many of us have been relieved of these quarter-hour demands. And because things have been, you don't have a commute, you have a more flexible schedule, we now have more time to communicate. So for lawyers, we have more time. We have more time to listen. We have more time to talk to our adversaries. We're able to have, more small talk conversations as to how they're doing and to treat them as colleagues. So the question I have for, people watching in your practice, because this person, Mr. Vafidis, Matthew Vafidis, from, this is a Law 360 article, by the way, he seems to see more civil. I wonder, for those watching, if you've seen it. Let's bring in the non-lawyer. Have you seen people out and about? Have you seen people civil to each other, or less, or about the same?
Civil. I think something like this either reminds us or teaches us about patience whenever we're in these kind of situations. I mean, we just dealt with it now, right? This technology is great when it works, and when it doesn't, it's a very frustrating thing. So you have to be patient with it. Pretty much everybody became a parent that was doing e-learning or remote learning with their kids, and there's a lot of patience with that. But I also think whenever we have these sort of large changes in what's going on. It could be something like a natural disaster, a hurricane, tornado. It could be something like a terrorist attack, think something like 9/11, or something like this pandemic. I think whenever we have something on this scale, I think it causes people to kind of take a pause and think about what really matters. And yes, our jobs and our careers are very important, but in like the big scope of things, sometimes we realize that maybe they're not quite as important, or as things about them aren't quite necessary as they have been in the past, right? So I think that's what a lot of it comes down to, is people just kind of take a look around them and see like what's really important, what's really substantial, and like, is it really worth getting upset about the things that we would have gotten upset about before?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that makes sense. And even sort of my practice, I've seen, people generally being more civil, more understanding. I mean, of course, there's a few cases here and there where they'll continue to be not very civil, and part of that is client driven as well. They want to act tough in front of their clients, and I get that, but it often leads to people being uncivil, discivil, whatever the word is, between each other. So definitely seen that,
right.
And hopefully it'll continue. Hopefully it'll continue on. So
yeah, I hope so.
All right, so let's move on to sort of the next category, which is last week's action item, which was, in general, to try to become closer with friends, try to include some diverse voices, and think about where you can become a regular in this quarantine environment and make plans for when everything reopens. And so, for me, I think that I think I've tried some more volunteering options, getting ready, as our church is beginning to open. And so just to come in and be greeters and that sort of thing. And so I volunteered for that, and always looking to expand my volunteering opportunities, get closer with friends and that sort of thing. And I wonder for you, how has it been? Because I know you typically do, you do a show over the summer, and that's where you see a lot of your friends. And I wonder, how have you seen sort of, friendships develop in this new environment?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I'm not getting out much. The only people I'm, for the most part, seeing is you guys, you and our children. I don't know that I'm saying friendships are suffering, and I feel like when things get back to a little bit more normal, I do think that a lot of the friendships will pick up right where they left off. But as far as developing new ones, it's really difficult. And as far as the people that unless I have a way to reach out on something like Facebook or social media or text messaging, yeah, there's a lot of people I just don't get to talk to. So for me, I think it's suffering a bit. I don't know if I'll let it go this way the whole summer. I might, maybe look into volunteering for something, or look into joining, even if it's an online community of some sort, doing something, because it is feeling a little isolating, and you just need your social outlet.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's exactly right. We had talked about sort of in previous, about how previous shows, how this has been very tough to keep up with people. I mean, you see people, you have these birthday parties that are virtual, or you're having these parades, and a lot of these graduation ceremonies went to virtual. But yeah, I mean, it's been very tough for folks, and because nurturing those relationships is so important to our success and to our well-being. I think it's important to find ways to just make sure that those relationships keep up. So
yeah, I'm going to give a shout out to one of our neighbors, because she's already posted her second thing on Facebook about this. She's already one for June and one now for July. She's been contacting food trucks and they're going to come to the middle school outside of her in her subdivision, and then people can just go up to the food trucks. And she just sent a message to me and the other members of the Theater Parents Association through NEQA and said, let's all meet up this day. Let's get our stuff at the food truck and let's sit in the parking lot with our folding chairs and just socially distance. And because we haven't seen each other physically since February, we met every month, yes, to talk about theater, but also just we're a good group. We like hanging out together. So I just texted her back right away and was like, I'm 100% there for that. Like, and it's going to be pierogies. So I'm 110% there for that. But I was
pierogies are good for sure.
Yeah, so I was like, yes, I will meet you outside of your, in your neighborhood for pierogies and to sit outside and talk. So I think we have to get creative is what it's coming down to.
Yeah.
And that was creative. She's called food trucks, and I thought that's a cool idea. So
yeah, no, that's
guys are doing stuff like that.
That's an amazing effort on her part. All right, so let's close out that, and now we're going to go into sort of the body conversation.
Okay.
And I think that, most people that I've talked to, at least, or, seen online, is that, people have gained their COVID-19, some additional body weight while, we've all been indoors, and that's true for a number of reasons. As you said, Kath, we're just not getting out as much as we used to. We're not, our activity level has dramatically changed. And so what Dr. Chatterjee talks about in the stress solution is that the body, just as, your purpose and just as your relationships can either be good or bad for your stress. If you have great relationships, your relationship is going to help de-stress you. If you have a poor relationship or you feel like it's not going as well as it should, then that is going to be a stressor in life. Same thing with the body. And Dr. Chatterjee says is that we feel stress in the body and experience stress as physical sensations. And so there are some immediate bodily reactions to stress. Things like, body aches, tension, butterflies in the stomach, all of those things occur, when we feel stress. And he also says that our bodies can be the cause of stress. And that's because of, what we've talked about in the past is that, our everything becomes a signal to our brain. And if our brain feels like it's being threatened, then we're going to have stress. If the brain is getting information that everything is okay, then we're going to be more in the thrive scenario, and we're going to feel less stressed. And so what our brain monitors the body to assess whether or not it's being threatened. And if the signals that it's getting from the body are bad, then we become stressed. But the good news, of course, is that we can change the information that our body is emitting to live more of our lives in the thrive state as opposed to the stress state. So we're going to talk about two things in particular. This is not rocket science, but I think it's something that we all need to get in terms, whether you're a lawyer or not, and that is eating and exercise. There are a few other things that we're going to talk about in terms of sleep and getting your body in a rhythm, but really these two things are, I think, the most important. So, I mean, and you and I have gone through, I think, this journey. We've and again, I think this is a great time to talk about it because of COVID-19, because of everything that's been going on. We've done Weight Watchers for a while, and we were I think very successful. And I was down in terms of body weight the most that I've ever been. But just because of this whole Corona thing, it's been, kind of out of whack.
It's been hard. It's been very hard to keep up with it. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what I thought we would talk about today is kind of, what I thought we would talk about today is, um, essentially going through, how to eat better, or how to eat
Hmm.
in order to keep us less stressed. In other words.
Right. Yeah, I think it's interesting because we talk about stress eating a lot, right? And when I've done Weight Watchers before, and so you go to the meetings and people talk about stuff, and obviously stress eating is a pretty popular topic to discuss. There are a lot of people, and all different lifestyles, all different body weight, shapes, all different parts of their own lives that will tell you when they get stressed, they eat. Very few people will tell you, I get stressed and I eat a carrot. Most people will get stressed and they will tell you, I ate a half a bag of chips or a whole bag of chips or a candy bar or, something like that. And so I think we think about stress and eating, we automatically think we're talking about stress eating. But what this was talking about was less about that and more about the choices of food we make and how what we eat can actually make us stressed. That was the only thing to me in the whole chapter that was like, whoa, mind blowing, even though a lot of it is very much common sense and things we've heard before. We've heard what's good for us and what's bad for us, but I don't know that I'd heard this is another reason these foods are bad for you, because not only do they make you overweight and not only do they make it difficult for you to sleep normal and slow down your metabolism, they actually physically stress you out. They cause some of the physical symptoms of stress. I don't know that people really think of it that way. So I found that really, really interesting when he talked about that. That, if you reach for something that's not necessarily good for you, it could cause more stress, or it could cause stress at all. People who, weren't stressed, but they just don't eat well. And then he changed just their diets, and that helped eliminate some of the stress.
Right.
Amazing.
All right. Well, why don't we get into some of that? And I guess the best way to start is at the beginning. So in 2015, Dr. Chatterjee talks about this study, or this quote that came out that says, nutrition may be as important to mental health as it is to cardiology, endocrinology, and gastroenterology. And basically what that means is that our food choices affect the functioning of our minds to the same extent that they may affect the health of our hearts and stomachs, which was very eye-opening to me, because I never really thought about how eating can affect your mental well-being. I mean, we talk a lot about how, if you don't eat well, you're gonna have physical pains. You might have a heart attack, you might have stomach problems, but we never really talk about how that goes into the mental health situation. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. And so, this is what you were talking about before, Kath, was eating yourself happy because of this stress cycle. And that means, that there's a feed forward cycle. So in other words, a lot of things contribute and cycle upon themselves. So that means, number one, you might have a traumatic event that occurs. Whether that's, you get yelled at work, or, something happens that causes a change in the body that causes cravings for highly processed food. So
I believe that.
yeah. So what would some of the things be, that we deal with in terms of, highly processed foods? So what is that? That's like
Fast food.
fast food, potato chips,
Right. Candy bars.
right?
I mean, mostly anything packaged, right? If it's not something that you're grabbing from produce or something that you're grabbing from a meat or deli department, it's usually processed. Anything pre-packaged is usually processed. And I think you're right. The higher processed, the more likely when we are super stressed we reach for it. That's why people have a bad day. They're driving home from work and there's McDonald's on the left and Wendy's on the right and Taco Bell, and 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, people are stopping because they're stressed and they're craving that abundance of processed, salty, or sweet foods. Yeah,
Right.
totally. see that.
And that could be for a number of reasons. That could just be, I've had a hard day at work, or, maybe
Hmm.
something traumatic happened,
Right.
at work or at school or something. And so you're looking
Right.
for something for that actually will cause cravings. And then you're looking for that other thing. And then I think most of us feel like, well, this is going to be a treat for me, or this is going to be, I deserve to go through the drive-through, or I deserve
Right.
to,
Hmm.
stop and get whatever.
Hmm.
But that actually, what Dr. Chatterjee is saying is that that actually does not, it doesn't help at all. I mean, it
Right.
may in our mind's eye for the second, or for, while we're eating it, maybe that, I don't know. I mean, I don't
Hmm.
know what the science is behind that moment, but then what actually happens, according to Dr. Chatterjee, is that food throws the body into a further stress state.
Right. I think also too, if you think about it and you're stressed, and you usually when you're stressed, like I said, you stress eat, you put a lot in, and you eat something that you know is not healthy for you. Like maybe you get a Big Mac and fries and a large, Coke or something, and you eat it. In the moment, you might be like, oh, this is, like you said, I deserve this and I feel so good eating this. A lot, if you really think about it though, a lot of times you will feel later not so good. You'll feel full, lethargic, a word you hear a lot, lethargic, like you can't move. If you eat something fresh and you think about it, you often feel very different after eating it. And it's not an instant. It's not like you eat and it's as soon as you swallow. It takes a while for your body to start to metabolize it. But if you really think about how your body feels after you eat stuff that's processed versus how you eat stuff that's healthy and natural, it is a difference. And I never thought of that before this chapter, about not only is it physically changing, like you said, your stomach, maybe your heart, your even something like your vascular, like the oxygenation in your blood, like that makes you feel a lot more awake. Things like that. It's also affecting your mind, your mental state. And I don't think we're as conscious of that. And I think it's true. And I think that I love that you said, oh, I deserve that. Because we look at bad food as like, I deserve to cheat, or I deserve to eat bad food, or I deserve. Why would you deserve to punish yourself? Because if you think about it, that processed food, there's nothing of value in it. So why do you deserve to do something bad to yourself? If you've been stressed out and you've had a tough day, don't you deserve to do something good to yourself? Like eat a nice salad, or go home and have a lean piece of chicken, or make yourself some fresh salmon or something. Like that's what you should be saying. I deserve to eat well and treat my body well.
Well, I agree with you. The problem, I think, is that most people, don't have that mindset, because we've never really been taught
Right.
that that we've taught that, if you eat bad food, that can harm sort of your health, and maybe people don't necessarily care about that, but it actually, according to what Dr. Chatterjee is saying, is that it causes you to go into a further stress state, and then it amplifies whatever mental health problems that you have.
Right.
So if you're feeling depressed, because of, something happened at work, or whatever happened, you had a, fight with your spouse, fight with your kids,
Right.
and you're feeling depressed. Well, if you go and you eat something bad, that's just going to throw your body into further stress. It's going to
Right.
amplify mental health problems. And then that amplification of your mental health problems causes more change in your body, and then that spiral actually continues.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
So what we're going to go through now is a little bit of a science lesson, which, again, I am not qualified to be teaching science. I was a political science and history major, but this comes right from Dr. Chatterjee's book. And so this is going to further tell us why it's, extremely important
Hmm.
that we eat well, because our body is constantly looking at what we're eating, and then
Right.
transferring information to the brain, which then tells the brain whether or not, hey, are you under attack, or are you
Right.
okay? And then that, you're either in the stress or the strive state, depending on that. So let's journey into a little bit of a science lesson, if you will. So, one thing that we've been constantly that that I think we've all heard is that food is fuel, and I think that's what most people think about it, and that's where a lot of the, sort of calorie counting things come from. If you think about, Weight Watchers, let me bring it back for a second. If you think about Weight Watchers, that is sort of the crowning principle is, food is fuel. And if you deplete your tank, if you will, by eating, a certain number of calories, then you're gonna lose weight because you're sort of under that threshold, if you will.
Right.
And so that's sort of where the food as fuel things come from. But what we're learning is that it's also information. So it's information from our body to our brain. And so the body reads the information from the food that we eat and sends it to the brain. And the nature of that information is actually the result of a three-way interaction between the food, what Dr. Chatterjee calls the bugs in your gut, so things like bacteria and the like in your stomach, and the immune system. And some of that information flows from the gut to the brain through the lymphatic system. Again, I'm not a scientist. I'm just a messenger here. But then some of that information also travels via these messenger cells that are made in the gut and then travel to the brain through the blood. So you have all of these systems. And then actually some of the information is then goes directly to the brain via this vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in the body. And so the key part of this information stream is your stomach or gut biome. So we have these populations of different, what he calls bugs. So bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, and their respective genetic material that in total weigh about as much as the human brain. And so these bugs interact with the body, with the food that we eat, and with each other. And those interactions determine many aspects of our health and mental health, our physical health and mental health. So again, if the body is getting information that, if something good is happening or we're doing okay, then our mental health is going to be better because we're not going to be stressed out. On the other hand, if our body is getting evidence to the contrary, then we're gonna become stressed out. So if we treat these microscopic organisms poorly, they can make us feel anxious and depressed. If we treat them well, they can actually lighten our mood, which to me was a real eye-opener that we can literally eat ourselves happy by having our stomach organisms make us happy, which is fascinating. So how do we keep ourselves, our gut bugs happy? So there are lots of things that we can do. We can cut out a lot of things. So he talks about cutting out highly processed and refined foods, drinking too much alcohol, smoking, drinking sugary soft drinks, having a lack of diversity in our diets, stress, lack of sleep, over exercising, although, for me, that's not a problem, eating foods containing emulsifiers, and using artificial sweeteners. All of these things could be harmful. And if we cut them out, then we can keep our gut bugs happy. And we can also keep them happy by feeding them food that nourishes them. And that includes, things like colorful plant-derived whole foods, rich in fibers such as vegetables, fruits, legumes, and beans. And of course, highly valuable compounds such as short-chain fatty acids communicate to the brain that everything is okay. So things like fish, for example, I think are things that would be things that that could harm or that could help us because of these omega-3 fatty acids. And so tell me, I know you're not a fish fan, so tell me about that.
But before I tell you about fish, there's a couple things I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
So I think when people see the word bugs and bug guts and bacteria, things like that, they kind of freak out a little bit. And unless you've just sat through freshman biology recently, I think a lot of us forget about these kind of things. So there's good bacteria in our body, right? I think most people know this at this stage, but I do come across people sometimes that have no clue. There are, obviously your stomach is alive, right? It has to be in order to break down the food that you eat. And you want bacteria in your stomach. You want the good bacteria, and you need a balance of that. And so when he's talking about these things in your stomach, such as these bugs, as he's calling them, he's talking about the things you need inside of your body in order for your body to process foods in a healthy way. So that's a good thing. The other thing is he talked about this idea of refined foods and highly processed foods, right? We've been hearing this for a really long time, that this is something that was added to the American diet probably in the 1950s or so, and this is one of the leading causes of why we see so much obesity, because we have these things and that it's not natural, it's not the way food was intended to be eaten, and our bodies are still like, what is this stuff? How do I deal with it? Something I've heard a long time ago, as I've myself journeyed on how to balance healthy eating. People always say, well, what does it mean to be healthy? What does it mean to be highly processed? Or what does it mean for food to be like refined foods? So refined is basically sugar and also flour. We, in the American diet, we consume a lot of sugar and we consume a lot of flour. And the flour that we consume in bread, in tortillas, in cereal, whatever, it has been refined. It means it's been bleached, okay? It's really hard in the American diet to not find that, and it's hard to go the other direction. But what we're supposed to be eating as humans is whole foods. It's supposed to be whole grains, whole wheat, actual stuff that has not been refined. Because when you do that, you take all the health out of it. You take a lot of the nutritional value out of it. So, and what you're left with is the stuff that your body cannot, the carbs that your body cannot take care of and then just store themselves in your body as fat. So that's a bad thing. And then the other thing, of course, is the highly processed food. Like I said, think of usually things that are packaged, are processed. But one time I heard a long time ago, well, how do I avoid these things? And I love this expression. It's called shop the outside. And what that means is, at most grocery stores, the aisles contain your processed and your refined foods. But the outside, where you find your produce and your deli and your dairy and your butcher area, those are usually the foods that are whole, they're unprocessed. And so when you're trying to work on eating better and eliminating high processed foods and refined foods, you should be shopping more of the outside of the grocery store. And I know people have done challenges where they haven't gone in an aisle at all, and they've been able to do all their shopping from shopping only outside stuff. It's hard. I mean, like spices. You think, well, there's nothing wrong with spices, but those are usually in the aisle unless you're going to grow an herb garden at home. But so I just wanted to clarify what the difference between like highly processed and refined foods are, and like how do you avoid those?
No, I think that's helpful, and I think there's a lot of questions I think in people's minds as to what they should be eating, and when they see on a package 100% whole grain or whole wheat, does it actually count as is that still highly processed, or is that count like we see that in breads and things of that nature?
Right. And then we start talking about the fatty acids. Again, we are programmed in this world to hear the word fat and be like, oh, I need low fat. Fat is bad. Fat is good for you. There is good fat. And even when you do something like Weight Watchers, they tell you, don't eliminate good fat. Like there's a difference between fat and being obese. We don't want to be obese as humans. We don't want to be fat either. But when in the medical world they talk about fat, they're not talking about you as a person. They would never say you're a fat person. A doctor wouldn't say that. A doctor would say you're, obese or pre-obese or something in that kind of. Right. They don't say fat because we need to stop looking at fat as a bad thing. We need fats in our diet, and the fats that are good for you are things like sunflower oil and olive oil. And there are ways to get those into your diet very easily. The first time I did Weight Watchers, after I had my second son, they had you actually allow for, I think it was a tablespoon of good fat a day. So you had to put in like, okay, I consumed a tablespoon of olive oil. You didn't just drink olive oil, but you put it in a salad dressing maybe, or you cooked your chicken in it or something. So you were getting that good fat into you. You brought up fish, right? Omega-3 fatty acid is one of the best things that's good for your brain, your body in general. He mentions it in the book, and those fatty chains that you need in your brain. Anybody who, I'm sure there are people that can remember freshman year of biology, or anybody who has kids that are around that age, most likely watched the movie Lorenzo's Oil. I watched it last year with students. And in that movie, this child has a disease because his body cannot make the right fatty acids in his brain. It's nothing, they had to actually come up with a diet, a special diet, and then develop a special oil out of different foods to give to their son because his brain couldn't do that. So those things are good. Don't ever hear the word fatty acid and be like, I don't want that, right? We have to learn, how do I get the good ones and where do I get them from? So fish, I hate fish. I hate fish, and this is always what I tell people, because I'm from the Midwest. I don't like lake fish. And then if someone says, eat lobster or eat shrimp or eat salmon or something like that, in the Midwest, if I eat that, it's not fresh fish. People tell me that if you eat it from the coast, it's a totally different experience, and I'm willing to try that. For me, a lot of my issues with fish is texture. I don't like the texture of fish. I don't like when you bite shrimp and it's kind of, I don't, it just doesn't do it for me. One time you cracked a crab leg in front of me, and I think I screamed out loud in a restaurant. Do you remember that? They were huge, king crab legs. No. But I don't like fish, but I can still get omega-3 fatty acids because luckily they sell vitamins. They sell supplements, and you could take a supplement of it to get it into your body. Legumes were mentioned. People might not know what legumes are, right? Legumes are things like peanuts. Peanuts and beans are so good for people, and I think people really overlook them and their health quality. But things like that are a good way to get some of those fatty acids if you're like me and you just can't do fish. So, sorry, I hate fish.
Well, maybe we'll get you to enjoy it a little bit more. We'll see.
I don't know. I do my tuna fish once a year during Lent, and that's just because it's Lent. So and I feel the obligation.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. If anybody has a good fish recipe, post it so you can do me a favor here, because my poor children and husband don't get fish because I won't cook it, I won't smell it, I won't eat it. So if you got a fish recipe, send it our way.
That's awesome. All right. So let's continue on here with talking about the immune system, because the immune system is also checking in on whether a food is okay or potentially harmful. And we actually get what's called inflammation, and that's triggered by the immune system when we eat bad food. And inflammation can be a good thing. And when we were designed to have inflammation as a short, sharp dose, because it helps us to put our bodies in a state of heightened alert to fend off anything foreign or unwanted that invades our systems. But the problem is that you can get chronic inflammation. So if you have inflammation all the time, you get chronic inflammation, which is at the heart of many serious complaints, including insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, or depression. And actually, Jamie Davis has commented, and she said, Sam's Club has a great seasoned salmon. You can throw it in the air fryer, which is amazing. So, all
right, we're going to try it.
There you go. And Jamie, I think, actually works for Sam's Club or Walmart. So, as counsel there. So, we'll definitely have to try that, Jamie. We appreciate that.
Shout out to Sam's Club.
Yeah, exactly. We know a lot of
sponsor us.
Yeah, we know a few people that work at Sam's or
Walmart,
from Walmart through the American Bar Association. So it's
good.
It's a great. We know a lot of people there. It's great.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go back to where we are here. Okay. So, yeah, so we talked about chronic inflammation. I think we ended there. And then you can also get what's called leaky gut syndrome, where if you're in a stress state, it can actually damage the integrity of the barrier that sits between the gut and the rest of the body, allowing harmful substances to gain access to the bloodstream. And that can contribute to a number of different health problems, including depression, low mood, and anxiety. Do we know anybody with the leaky gut syndrome? I don't.
I've heard the expression. I don't know that I've ever met anybody personally who's had it, but I know I've heard that expression before, leaky gut. I know I
Yeah,
have.
it sounds pretty bad. It sounds like things from in your gut get the toxins get into your bloodstream, and
Right.
that just
Right.
sounds
And
like
some
a
of the
bad thing.
bacteria, which is, it's good. Again, the systems of the body are very complicated, but when they work there, it's like an amazing machine that the human body is. But the stuff that's in your gut is amazing in your gut and it works in your gut, but it's not supposed to be in other parts of your body, clearly. And I think that's what this is getting at, like you said, the bloodstream and things like that. And then that's kind of a weird thought, like, oh, I don't want that bacteria that's in my stomach to be in my bloodstream, right? Yeah, that sounds terrible.
No, not at all. So let's yeah. So at the end of the day, what we face basically two choices, which is are we going to give our brain the information it needs to thrive? Or are we going to make our brain think that it's under attack and cause the body to throw its defenses up? Those are really the two choices that we have. And so there's studies that show, again, the link between food and mental well-being. In 2017, there was a study where it's called the SMILES trial, where patients with severe depression were already undergoing treatment for depression. And they put those folks on a modified Mediterranean diet of oily fish, colorful fruit, vegetables, and whole grain. There are your fish again.
Yeah. That Mediterranean diet, they rave about it. It's just such a good mix of foods that really keeps you healthy. We're gonna have to try it.
Well, and apparently it also helps. And again, I think most of the time that we hear about it, it's because or it's due to the physical health, that it
Right.
helps you feel better physically.
Right.
But what this study showed was after 12 weeks of Mediterranean diet, so the patients actually had a much greater reduction in depressive symptoms than the control group, who did not change their diet, but instead were given social support. 1/3 of the patients in the dietary support group had actually met the criteria for remission of major depression, compared to only 8% in the control group, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And so, Dr. Chadri goes through, well, why is the Mediterranean diet good for our mental health? Again, it's that lack of highly processed foods, the presence of whole foods such as colorful fruit and vegetables. They have a calming effect on the immune system. This reduces inflammation, which again is maybe the root cause of many cases of depression. The foods reduce your leaky gut.
Right.
You have oily fish, which is rich in the omega-3 fats, which have a positive effect on our mood. And then this diet contains a highly diverse set of foods that has a positive effect on the gut microbiome, which will send beneficial messages to the brain. So let's go over, so he gives us 7 food-related tips to improve our gut health. So number 1, diversify your diet by eating the alphabet over 30 days. Try something new from the dining out menu. And for me, at least, I'm guilty of going to a restaurant, eating the same thing every time.
I think a lot of people are like that, though. You find something you like either at a restaurant or every restaurant. I think I have a 16-year-old that orders a bacon cheeseburger no matter where he is. But I think we're all guilty of that. You know, you order something, you like it, next time you go back, you order it again. Yeah. And then you do it at home, too. I mean, my favorite vegetable is broccoli, and it's like every time I go to the store, I buy broccoli. And everybody's like, oh, God, broccoli again. But you know, you find out what you like and you stick with it. We're not very good at usually diversifying. I agree.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about, he talks about eating the alphabet. I'm
very excited.
Yeah, I have he gives the alphabet and basically gives you a food that you can try for each of that. And we'll go through that, not one by one, but hopefully I have a PDF that will show up for y'all.
Yeah.
So the number one, so that was number one. The number two tip is to look for new foods to buy at the supermarket. So again,
Stop buying broccoli.
Exactly. Stop buying broccoli. Buy something new. For gosh sakes.
I bought Brussels sprouts. Nobody ate them but you and me.
Well, there's lots of other things apparently. Like
I like green vegetables. I will admit, I'm very, very drawn to green vegetables.
There's eggplants.
Yeah, I never buy eggplant. You're right.
Jerusalem artichokes.
Mm-hmm. And Dave, there's these wonderful things called mushrooms.
Oh.
Well, you got to do it. If I got to eat fish, you got to eat mushrooms.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll see how that goes.
We'll mix them together.
Jamie, do you have any mushroom recipes? Because
mushrooms are amazing. Portobello burgers. You use the portobello mushroom as the hamburger. Incredible.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Dave's like, save me.
So here's number 3, which is give yourself a 12-hour window every day without food. So this is essentially, I think it does two things for you. It will limit your nighttime eating. So if you, if you have dinner at 7, let's say you ate dinner at 8 o'clock, that is going to be your stopping point. Whatever your stopping point is, that's going to be it for the night. And then 12 hours from then, you're not going to eat again. So 8 to 8, 12 to 12, whatever it is. But I think
that's a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
I think a lot of people like to eat late at night. I mean, they after they've had dinner and then they've done with other work, whatever, they settle on the couch. I mean, you and I are both guilty of it.
Yeah. Jamie says my window is when I sleep. LOL. That's funny. Yeah.
That's what we need to do. Instead of eating, just go to bed.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. Then maybe that's I don't sleep enough either. I think that's probably true for most of us. Yeah, so that's another thing that he would like us to try. And then limiting snacks between meals, because our gut bugs thrive when they get a break from food. Imagine that when we're not constantly eating, it gives the bacteria in our stomachs kind of a break from doing what they do, and they thrive. I'm not sure what the science is behind that.
Well, it's kind of weird, but I was reading about this. One of the things they do is they sort of like wash the inside of your stomach. It sounds kind of weird, but the bacteria eat, and they eat around like the stuff in your, they kind of clean out your stomach for you, right? They get everything out of there and make it nice and clean and hospitable for your next meal. And it's interesting that he brought up this thing about not snacking, because I'm in the middle of reading another book. It's by a doctor. He's actually a kidney doctor who specializes in type 2 diabetes. He was trying to treat his patients for their type 2 diabetes, but doing more than just putting them on things like insulin. And he's looking at diet in this book. And so he talked about part of his, and I haven't gotten to the whole book yet, so I haven't gotten to like the plan, but I've gotten his overview of it. He talks about fasting, although his thing is like you fast for a day. But he also talks about, I just lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. He also talks about what did you say before fasting? What was your other tip?
It was 12-hour window. Buying new foods at the supermarket.
I don't know. But he talks about, my point is, and I don't know why I lost my train of thought, but my point is he talks about some of the same kind of things that the book that we just read talks about, where he's talking about having those breaks between your eating and the kind of things that you eat to help with your gut health.
Yeah.
Continue on.
Well, and then the next tip is to skip a meal now and again. So he doesn't really give a
Yeah.
lot of detail on that, but again, I think and I've heard, I follow like Tim Ferriss, and he's a big proponent of skipping meals and, fasting and that sort of thing.
Yeah. That's becoming more common, because for the longest time we've heard 5 times a day, eat 5 small meals, or, eat 3 meals plus 2 snacks. And now I'm seeing more and more things that are saying, you don't have to eat that much. You don't have to eat that often. So that's, I don't know, maybe something to try. I don't know that I have that kind of self-discipline right now to like fast, but I think it's something to look into. If more than one source is saying it, there must, it makes you think there must be some credence to it.
Yeah. The next tip is to eat fermented foods, such as kimchi, sauerkraut, or is it kefir? Kefir?
Yeah, kefir.
Kefir.
Yeah, it's kefir. Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what kefir is. Sauerkraut, I'm very familiar with.
Well versed.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I mean, I'm German. You're Polish. I mean,
yeah.
we do sauerkraut. It's a thing.
And apparently, it introduces beneficial bacteria into the body and improves gut health.
Yeah, I'm here for fermented food. That's fine.
Yes, and then 7, which I don't know, is avoiding artificial sweeteners. That's a tough one.
This is so hard, because and I think this is something we both struggle with. Like, I love sugar. I love sweet stuff. I think most people do. I think that's another thing that we've introduced into our diet. That's not something we needed as humans back in the evolutionary chain. And now our bodies are like, but that's good. I want it. So I think the issue there is, like, I used to drink way too much soda. So then I went on to, okay, well, Dave drinks diet soda. I'll try diet. And I'll drink diet, or I like Coke Zero a lot. But it's not that you're necessarily getting rid of the sugar. You're getting rid of the sugar, and then you're replacing it with an artificial sweetener. And everybody thinks, well, 0 calories, no sugar. But instead, you're putting artificial means made in a lab, not found in nature, not real, fake, processed. And when you put that in your body's going, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to treat that. I'll store it, or I'll do this with it. And it's in everything. And you and I were talking about this the other day. Well, what are we going to drink if we get rid of artificial sweeteners? Because we put artificial sweetener in our coffee and our hot teas. And I like to buy the Crystal Light drink mix. Sorry, Crystal Light. And all of that stuff is artificial sweetener. So it's like, what do you drink?
Well, so I don't know if you're aware of what we do on the show. I know you've followed it on and off, but we kind of take a Tim Ferriss. I don't know if you do know Tim Ferriss. Have you heard of him?
I do not.
He's a man who experiments.
I like it.
So we're going to experiment in this for the next week and see how it goes. But before we do that, let me get to the rest of the
Yeah,
tips.
this was a good list.
This is the non-food tips,
right?
Which are, number 1. So this is a fascinating discussion to be having.
This one was my favorite.
Because this is an interesting discussion to be having now because of, what's going on in the world. So he says, so number 1 is only taking antibiotics when absolutely necessary, that they annihilate the gut bugs.
Yes. Let me tell you, I am a huge anti-antibiotics person. When I go to a doctor, which I try not to go unless I know I have something that my body's immune system can't work on its own, I always tell the doctor, I really don't want to take antibiotics if I don't have to. A lot of people, and this is something we're getting better at, but if you look back 15, 20, 25 years ago, you go to a doctor's office with anything, a cough, a cold, a sneeze, whatever. Okay, antibiotic. That is why the problem with that is if everybody takes antibiotics, or if a person takes them too much, you become resistant to them. Your body builds up an immunity to antibiotics, and they become useless. So me personally, I never wanted to take antibiotics because I don't want myself to become resistant, and I don't want this idea of resistance to happen, because then when we do need antibiotics for something, they're not effective, and then we have to create new antibiotics. The other reason I don't like antibiotics is exactly what he says in the book. Antibiotics do not know exactly what germ in you the doctor wants them to kill. Antibiotics will get rid of everything. They get rid of good bacteria and bad bacteria. So when you're on the antibiotic, you are more susceptible to a lot of things. Some people will go on antibiotics and they'll have issues bowel issues. Well, why? I'm taking something to address a head cold because the bacteria is now off kilter in your body because the antibiotic is doing what you told it to do, which is kill all the bacteria. So I'm very, like, I understand they have a place and a time. And when a doctor says to me, you absolutely have to have an antibiotic, I will take it and I will take it correctly. But I always say, if it can be avoided, what else can I do? And usually my doctor knows me pretty well now because I've been doing it for a while. But usually when I tell a doctor that, they're like, oh my God, why aren't there more patients like you? Why does everybody come in seeking antibiotics? Because too many people have been for so long saying antibiotics will kill all the germs, you're fine. You know, your body can fight off a lot of germs. Let your body do it. Avoid antibiotics if you can. Take them when you absolutely need to take them. Then that's it.
The counterpoint to that is people like me who go to the doctor and want to feel better like instantaneously. And so, you know, because
I would feel fine if you was taking your wife's advice and used eye drops, but I'm just saying.
Well, no, my allergies are actually feeling better. But yeah, no, like I think a lot of people, you know, you go to the doctor and you're like, well, I want to feel better from whatever it is, and so they're angry if the doctor doesn't, you know, give them something. I'm actually one of those people. So, but we're all learning together.
I just got a comment, Dave. I got a comment. I'm doing a watch party on Facebook, and I got a comment from Frank that says plant-based sugars such as Whole Earth is a non-artificial option for artificial sweeteners. I've never heard of Whole Earth. We'll have to find out, do some research on that. Have you heard of Whole Earth?
Is that Frank your dad, or is that?
Yeah, that's Frank, my dad.
Oh, okay. No, that's okay. I wanted to say, I didn't know if it was a different Frank. I didn't know if we knew any other Franks. What was it called?
It's called Whole Earth. It's a plant-based sugar. That's what he says. It's not artificial. Yeah.
We'll have to check it out.
I'm asking him where I can find it. Cool.
Yeah, no, we'll check it out. Maybe we can get that at Sam's Club when we're getting the salmon.
Salmon. And the air fryer, because we don't have one, so we'll pick that up.
Well, that's true too.
And you know they'll have an air fryer. It's probably next to the tires.
Next to the tires?
Supposed to laugh. Yeah, because you can get tires there. You can get everything at Sam's Club.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so the antibiotics. Go back to the antibiotics.
Yes, continuing on. So the second non-food tip is to avoid non-essential medications, which I think kind of goes along with the same thing. Yeah. The number 3 is lower your stress, which, you know, that's what we're trying to do with. What's that?
It's so funny. Like, just lower your stress. Okay, just do it. But we're trying to figure out how do we lower our stress, right?
Yeah, no, and that's what we're doing. You know, reading this book and you know, through this video cast. The next one is get adequate sleep, which is hard for a lot of people, but hopefully, you know, with COVID, with you know, not having longer commutes, I've seen that I've certainly been sleeping more than usual, although I do get up early at times. But sleep doesn't seem to be as hard. But as we go into normality, or, you know, the new normal, if you will, you know, we have to make sure and watch that.
Yeah.
And then here's this is the one that made me almost laugh because so he says the 5th tip is don't try to be too clean. So
I love this one
he's
too.
concerned with antibacterial sprays, and he says hand washing in particular, which of course is ironic because
right now,
what we're having now is you know, everyone is telling us to wash, and you know, I was telling you this before, you know, not on the air, so to speak, but you know, like, you know, we're big Disney fans, and you know, we've been to Universal parks, and wherever we go, and you know, videos that we've seen, they basically are giving you, you know, the hand pumps, the antibacterial. What is the word I'm missing?
Sanitizer.
The sanitizer, yeah, hand sanitization. Every time you get on a ride, and so, you know, at some point, does that stop the effectiveness of the sanitization?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a really good question. But I did like that point too about like this obsession with over cleanliness. And I think it was the other book I was reading because like I'm reading two books at once about similar stuff. But they were talking about allergies. Does this guy talk about allergies, or was it the other book?
I mean,
It was,
not yet.
okay,
No.
so that was the other book. He was talking about an increase in allergies could be due to the fact that we don't expose ourselves and we don't expose our children to the same things that we used to. Like we don't let kids get dirty or get into dirt without like quickly washing them off, right? And so because they aren't exposed to the stuff, then there's sort of this like lack of an immunity build up to it. But he had the other man I'm reading, his name is Dr. Jason Fung, Fung, and he is saying very similar things about this idea of over sanitization. Like we clean ourselves. So not that we should be gross. I mean, hygiene is important, right? But that there's an over cleanliness that, again, just like I talked about antibacterial, that we sometimes kill off good things that we need in this, in this push to make ourselves as clean as possible. And it's something you never think about. Like you don't really think about, oh, you're too clean, or you're using hand sanitizer too much, or and especially now because of what's going on, we've been being pushed to tell people to be cleaner and to be cleaner. But doctors are saying that we are overdoing it with it. It's interesting. And I really found it interesting that he talked about things like, allergies and other things that didn't exist before. We became so obsessed with cleanliness. And I also think it's the level, like the strength of the cleanliness that we're using. When we were kids, I mean, I don't know about you, I used a bar or dial soap. I mean, there wasn't a lot of diversity in what you use to clean. Now you have people that use cleansers for their face and several different things for this and that, and it's constantly in all these new chemicals. And does it have an effect on us? I mean, don't stop washing your hands, obviously, but it was something to think about.
Yeah, no, it was fascinating, especially during
during what we're going through. Please keep washing your hands.
Yes, yeah. So yes, do your social distancing and wash your hands, please. And then number 6, don't overexercise. That obviously doesn't apply to me.
Never applies to us.
But it does happen. Number 7, speak to your doctor about whether you could benefit from a probiotic supplement,
yes,
which
probiotics
produces or introduces the good bacteria into the gut.
Oh, I got another fish recipe. Almond crusted Parmesan salmon with asparagus. All right, looks like we're going salmon. Okay.
All right.
Probiotics, right? So that was like a big thing that started a couple of years ago, and it was just easy. You just buy probiotics, and like, your doctor would say, go get a probiotic, and you'd buy a pill form or something over the over the counter at the pharmacy. But the book I was reading about probiotics was mentioned as well, and they said don't just get any probiotics. Like you need to talk, and this guy said the same thing. Talk to your doctor, because there are different kinds of probiotics out there. There are different levels of like what's actually good quality, what's not. I think probiotics are a really smart idea. And there are natural probiotics. I mean, for instance, yogurt. I hate yogurt. I think it's disgusting. But for people that like yogurt, it's a natural probiotic. I know all the things that are good for me, I don't eat. It tells you a lot. But probiotics come in food, so look for that too, because obviously natural probiotics are good for you. But if you need supplements, or if you're having additional problems with your stomach, you can definitely talk to your doctor, and they can give you a recommendation for a probiotic. And I think be wary of just walking into the store and being like, I'm just going to buy the first probiotic I see. And I think talk to your doctor about it. I think that's a really smart thing to do. It's something I've been thinking about possibly doing, is trying to get on more of a regular probiotic situation.
This is part of the experimentation process.
Part of my experiment. I'm gonna
we're the guinea pigs for our watchers.
It's all good. It's all good.
Okay, so what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to share. Oh, now it's not going to let me share my screen.
Oh.
It's not going to let me show the eating. Oh, that's a shame. And I'm not sure why, but technology. But the next part of this is to talk about the eating the alphabet, and that is actually
my favorite part of the whole.
This is this week's action item. So I'll just go through some of these some of these things, and maybe I can post it in the Lawyers Emotional Intelligence Facebook page. But things such as, so A is, asparagus and apples. B is bananas, berries, bok choy, broccoli, Brussels sprouts,
Yum.
beetroot, black beans, Brazil nuts. I'm not familiar with a Brazil nut.
Yeah, it's kind of nut. Yeah.
It's a kind of nut, yeah. C is cocoa, chickpeas, cabbage.
Cocoa does not mean hot cocoa, people. It does not. I saw that. I was like, oh, cocoa. We'll just drink some hot cocoa. We'll be fine. No.
That's like cocoa
Good.
powder?
I think they mean maybe cocoa beans, or I don't know if you've ever had like cocoa powder. Yeah, like cocoa powder that you like bake with. It's not sweetened. You can put it in recipes. Like I think we put it in chili before, actually.
Okay.
So
Well, we have to
we'll put some cocoa
remember
powder.
that Dr. Chatterjee is from the UK, and they may do things a little bit
Yeah.
differently than we do in the States. D is dandelion greens and dill. E is eggplant. F, fennel, fava beans. G, ginger, garlic, garden peas. You get the point. And again, I'm not going to belabor all of this, but I'll post a list in the Lawyers Emotional Intelligence on the page for all of you to look at. And but yeah, so what we're going to try to do over the next 30 days is to put all of these is to eat from the alphabet. Over the next 7 days, my wife and I, Ms. Catherine, we're going to attempt to eat as many of these as we can over the next 7 days. So
I'm so excited.
we're gonna have to go. We'll have to go shopping after the show tonight.
Mm-hmm. Just so you know, too, Dr. Chatterley has a webpage, and on it he has a downloadable chart with all the alphabetical foods.
Well, perfect. I will post a link after the show
It's super
tonight.
easy to find.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it. I think for what we're going to talk about for this week. Was there any other sort of discussion from you or from any of our commenters?
I'm looking. I didn't get anything additional. Like I said, I got the 2 recipes, which is great.
Yeah. Well, we can post recipes too if necessary. So great.
All right.
So next week we're going to be talking about how to make exercise work for you, along with my lovely wife, if you will return. We have another guest host, Lakeisha Randall, who is the founding partner of the Randall Law Firm in Atlanta. She's a former in-house trial lawyer, also has served on the ABA's Commission on Lawyers Assistance Programs, a great group. And so she'll be joining us to talk about how we can make exercise work for us. And thank you very much. Thank you, Kathy, for joining me, for being the inaugural guest on the Lawyers Emotional Intelligence.
Yeah, it was fun.
Excellent.
Good time.
So, as always,
of course, it was about food, so you knew I was going to be there.
Yes. All right. So just remember, emotional intelligence is necessary for all lawyers, and we can learn these skills together. So thank you very much for joining us, and have a great night.